Welcome back to the channel. Hope you all are doing well. Before I get into today's story, I want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas. I'm very thankful for the support you guys have shown on this channel and hope you have a fantastic Christmas holiday. Now, let's get into today's story. I never thought I would be the one writing a story like this. But here I am sitting at my desk trying to make sense of what happened. It all started a few months ago when I started to notice that something wasn't right with my wife Rachel. We had been married for 10 years and for the most part, things had been good between us. We loved each other and were committed to making our relationship work. But lately Rachel had been acting strange. She was distant and preoccupied, and when I asked her about it, she brushed it off and told me that she was just stressed with work. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I had always trusted Rachel, but my gut was telling me that something was off, and then I started to notice something else. Rachel was spending a lot of time with her therapist, Dr. Tom. At first, I didn't think much of it. Rachel had always been open about her therapy sessions and I had always supported her in seeking help when she needed it. But as time went on, I started to feel like there was more to the story. Tom seemed to be around a lot more than a typical therapist should be. He was always calling and texting Rachel, and she seemed to be hiding something from me. I started to get the feeling that something was going on between them. I tried to push my suspicions aside and tell myself that I was being paranoid. But the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that something wasn't right. And so I made a decision. I was going to hire a private investigator to find out the truth. I knew I had to be careful about how I approached Rachel about my suspicions. I didn't want to accuse her of anything without any proof, and I didn't want to cause any unnecessary tension in our relationship. So I waited for the right moment, and when we were alone one evening, I gently broached the subject. I told her I knew she'd been spending a lot of time with Dr. Tom lately and that I just wanted to make sure everything is okay between us. I support her in her therapy, but I can't shake the feeling that something is going on between them. Rachel looked at me with a hard expression. She would angrily spit back about how I could even insinuate such a thing. She said it was ridiculous and that I need to have more faith in her. I could tell that my words had struck a nerve, and I immediately regretted bringing it up, telling her I'm sorry for even bringing it up and that I just wanted to make sure everything was but Rat wasn't satisfied with my apology. She continued to deny any wrongdoing, and she even went as far as to gaslight me, making me feel like I was the one in the wrong for even questioning her. She told me I am paranoid and jealous. She told me to trust her and stop acting like Dr. Tom is anything more than her therapist. I didn't know what to believe. On the one hand, I wanted to trust Rachel and believe that she was telling me the truth. But on the other hand, my gut was telling me that something wasn't right. I didn't know what to do. So I decided to let it go and try to move on. I tried to push my suspicions aside and focus on our relationship. But as time went on, my doubts only grew stronger. Eventually I knew I had to do something to find out the truth. And so I turned to a close friend of mine who happened to be a private investigator. I explained the situation to him and asked him to find out everything he could about Rachel's relationship with Dr. Tom. My friend, the private investigator, had worked tirelessly to uncover the truth about Rachel's relationship with Dr. Tom. And when he finally presented me with the evidence, I was shocked and devastated. The PI had used a variety of methods to gather the evidence, including surveillance witness statements and even wiretapping. And what he discovered was shocking. There were photos of Rachel and Dr. Tom together looking intimate and flirtatious. There were texts and emails that hinted at a deeper relationship between them. And then there was the video. The video was shot from a hidden camera and it showed Rachel and Dr. Tom in the therapist's office engaged in a sexual act. It was graphic and explicit. And as I watched it, I felt my stomach turn. She did things to him that I have never seen from her. She was consumed by sexual energy, almost as if she liked what she was doing even more because she knew it was wrong. My gut wrenched as I watched my wife perform acts that she had even denied me her own husband. I couldn't finish the video, and as tears welled up in my eyes, I shut the phone off and looked back at my friend who showed an empathetic face. I couldn't believe that Rachel, the woman I had loved and trusted for so many years, could do something like this to me. I felt hurt and betrayed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my whole world had been turned upside down. My friend could see how upset I was, and he tried to be as supportive as possible. He told me that he was sorry for having to break the news to me, but that he had a job to do and he knew that the truth, no matter how painful, was always the best course of action. He knew how difficult this must be for me, and he tried to be as supportive as possible. But ultimately, it was up to me to decide what I was going to do about it. I knew that I had to take action. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I knew I had to confront Dr. Tom. I couldn't just sit back and let Rachel's infidelity go unchecked. And so I made a plan. I waited until Rachel was out of town on a business trip. And then I headed to the therapist's office. I was nervous and anxious, but I knew I had to do this. When I arrived at the office, I knocked on the door and waited for Dr. Tom to answer. When he opened the door and saw me standing there, he looked surprised. He asked if he could help me, his voice laced with suspicion. I tried to keep my voice steady and asked if I could talk with him. I told him it was about Rachel. Dr. Tom's expression changed, and I could tell that he knew what I was talking about and deflected by stating, "This isn't the appropriate place to have this conversation." My anger and frustration started to bubble up, and I finally told him that I know what was going on between him and Rachel and that I won't stand for it any longer. I told him I want the truth and I want it now. Tom looked uncomfortable, and I could see that he was trying to think of a way out of this situation, but I wasn't going to let him off the hook that easily. He wouldn't speak. I crossed my arms and told him I wasn't leaving until we spoke man to man. I deserve to know what's been going on between him and my wife, and I deserve to punch him square in his mouth for it. Dr. Tom looked at me for a long moment, and without saying anything, he slammed his office door in my face. I was appalled. I knocked again with no response. After days of stewing in my home, waiting for my wife to return, I lost my hatred for Tom and directed my rage at my wife. Tom knew better, but he was single. My wife has an obligation to tell me the truth. If she wants to play dumb, then I have something else coming for her. So I gathered all of the evidence that the PI had gathered and sent it to my in-laws. Rachel's mother and father. I knew that this was a risky move, but I felt like I had no other choice. I couldn't just let Rachel's betrayal go unpunished. Rachel's parents were shocked and devastated when they saw the evidence. They had always thought that Rachel was a good, faithful wife, and they couldn't believe that she had cheated on me. Rachel's mother was particularly upset. She had always been close with Rachel, and she couldn't understand why her daughter would do something like this. She cried and begged Rachel to come clean and tell the truth. But Rachel just denied everything and trying to downplay the situation. Rachel's father was equally disappointed. He had always been proud of Rachel and had always supported her, and he couldn't understand why she would betray the family in such a hurtful way. She tried to deny everything at first. But when it became clear that her family wasn't going to believe her lies, she broke down and admitted the truth. She told me that she had been unhappy and unfulfilled in our relationship and that she had turned to Dr. Tom for comfort and support. I was hurt and angry when I heard her confession, but I also felt a sense of relief. Finally, the truth was out in the open, and I knew that we could start to move forward. Rachel begged for my forgiveness and promised to do whatever it took to make things right. But I knew that I couldn't just let this go. Rachel had betrayed me in the deepest and most hurtful way possible, and I couldn't just brush it aside and pretend like everything was okay. The relationship between me and Rachel's family was strained, to say the least. They were upset with me for exposing Rachel's infidelity, and they felt like I had humiliated their daughter and caused unnecessary pain. But I knew that I had done what I had to do. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing while Rachel continued to cheat on me. As a result of my actions, Rachel was disowned by her family. She was left alone and shunned by the people she had always relied on for support. And for me, it was a small measure of revenge for the pain that she had caused me. Rachel begged for my forgiveness and promised to do whatever it took to make things right. But I couldn't just let everything go. Rachel had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I knew that I needed some time to heal and figure out what I wanted. I told Rachel that I needed some space, and I suggested that we take a break from each other for a while. Rachel was heartbroken, but she knew that she had brought this on herself. And so we went our separate ways with the understanding that we needed some time to heal and figure out what we wanted. As for Dr. Tom, he was out of the picture. I had no interest in talking to him again. And I knew that Rachel felt the same way. He had played a part in ruining our relationship, and I wanted nothing to do with him. As the days and weeks passed, I struggled to come to terms with what had happened. I was heartbroken and angry, and it was difficult for me to move on. But eventually I knew that I had to take action. I couldn't just sit back and let Rachel's betrayal define my life. And so I decided to file for divorce. It was a difficult decision, but I knew it was the right one. Rachel and I had our chances, and I knew that we couldn't go back to the way things were. The divorce process was long and painful, but eventually it was over. Rachel and I went our separate ways, and I tried to move on with my life. It was difficult, but I knew that I had to be strong and take care of myself. You did a great job. You handled this situation pretty well. If I were you, I would have also reported the guy to his department so that he would have gotten fired and lost his license as well. Regardless, justice was still served to your cheating wife, and I'm happy you've been able to move on. I wish you all the best and hope you can fully recover from this. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you haven't already,